or not. I've chosen not to use the autopilot, even though the autopilot works fine. But the autopilot is very aggressive on keeping the boat on a very straight course. And so I don't want to do that because I really don't want to test the link to see if it'll hold, and I know we can get home by hand steering. So we're gonna, well, I say hand steering, but now after a day and a half I figured out that I don't have to actually sit there with my hands. Right now the seas are calm enough that I could steer like a monkey using my feet instead. So it makes it a lot more comfortable to be able to sit here almost as if the autopilot was on. But so we have another 600, 500 miles or something like that. We have another 4 days of sailing still to get home. But this is doable, you know, and this coming out of a full-blown state of emergency to get to a place where we're safe as a family, the boat's fine, and everything is working. We just need to get a new steering chain when we get back to Fort Lauderdale. So we are counting our blessings that everything is good, and right now we have fantastic weather. We're back in the southern Bahamian waters as we start the final stretches of our trip back to Fort Lauderdale. All right, let's get cracking. So great question, great comment, great suggestion, and if we had one, I think we would have used it, and we probably would not have been facing backwards playing hockey with the boat. And this is one of them. We now have 3 tiller extensions on board, but so if we had something like this, or I have 2 longer ones, that would allow me to steer the boat from here. I will say looking a lot more sailing magazine cover worthy. I think this would have certainly allowed us to have more leverage with the tiller and have a better line of sight as to where we're going. This, in either direction, whether we had it facing this way or the other way, we used a variety of different lines. We used a variety of different types of knots to try to tie this down. The idea being that you would have 2 lines, one going out this way, one going out this way, and you keep this rudder, you know, from moving. The big problem with it was it would not stay. No matter what kind of a fancy sailing knot or any kind of knot we tied on here, the amount of pressure on the rudders and then the movement of the tiller kept the knots kind of over time just wiggling, and before you knew it they were down here, and this thing was all over the place. And we tried it both ways, and it simply just didn't work. This is a smooth 3/4 inch solid stainless steel heavy and heavy duty emergency tiller. One comment was, why didn't we put a hole in this and then try tying it off? But I gotta tell you, in 6 to 8 foot seas, there's no drilling. We had no time to ever take our hands off of this for a second, and there's no way we could have taken it out and tried to have drilled a hole. This would really need to go to a machine shop and have it locked off, and they would drill it with some kind of drill press. So locking off, the only way for us to have locked off the tiller or to lock off the rudders is from the center hub that's in the wheel at the helm. Let me go show you real quick. So this is how we lock the hub. So when you go counterclockwise, this is now loose, and you can turn the wheel. When you go clockwise and lock it down, it's locked and it doesn't move. This locking mechanism became irrelevant. It became completely useless when the steering chain broke, because this is locking the wheel, which is locking the chain from moving, which locks the cables from moving and the rudders, moving around. But there was no more control. This had zero control over the cables or the rudder posts and rudders because the chain wasn't there anymore. So locking it here was not an option. This is where down here is the rudder post. There's that big shaft right there is the rudder post. This is the steering arm. It comes up to this beam, and this beam runs under the bridge deck where Maki is standing right now, and it runs under the bridge deck to the port side. This is the starboard side. It runs over to the port side, and so when you turn the wheel, both of these turn at the same time, starboard and port. This is the end of the steering cable right here. So these cables are attached here. They run under the bridge deck. They run up and behind the helm, and they attach to the steering chain. So as the steering chain as we're turning the wheel, and the steering chain, as the steering chain is going up and down, this cable is being pulled or released. And so that's how this whole system works. Because we could not lock at the helm and we could not tie this off, the only other option would have been somehow to use maybe a ratchet strap. We have ratchet straps on board, and maybe to have used a ratchet strap to try to lock this in place so it's restricted in movement. But I would say that that was not something that came into my mind right away, because again, I could not let go of this. And even if Maki was giving me a break and she was here holding this, the seas were big, water was splashing around. It's never my first thought to open up the engine bay and potentially have a wave dump water inside here. So maybe when we got to anchorage, when we got to our anchorage, we were able to patch the chain together and get ourselves home safely. So Leopard or Robertson and Kane, who builds this, we've reached out to them to say, hey, you guys, this is what happened. The locking mechanism was essentially removed from the equation of use, and maybe they could engineer something that you'd be able to manually lock these rudders in place here down in each engine bay. That would be kind of cool. So anyway, one of the a captain for a catamaran had written to us and said, I show my crew where this emergency tiller is, and we show the crew where you would put it in, but they've also never actually taken the emergency tiller out, set it in the rudder post, and used it. And so now he's implementing that as part of his normal pre-sail, passage crew review of emergency equipment, and they're going to actually put it in and have the crew members each, as the boat's moving, to feel it. I will say just a quick note. Putting this in right now, like we are sitting here, you can't even turn this. I could unlock it at the helm, but we've tried this, that you unlock at the helm and you try to push this, but because there's no actual pressure on the rudders, the boat's not sliding through the water or moving through the water, it's really hard to move this. Once the boat gets moving, it becomes a really easy thing, because the water pressure is actually what's pushing on the rudders, and it makes steering here a lot easier. Because you're right on top of the rudder post, there's no leverage. It's a hard connection to the post, and you're trying to force these rudders to move. Get off anchorage or get off your dock, pull up the sails, and you're out on a beautiful day like this, and you're sailing. To be honest, whether you're under motor sailing, but if you're sailing, then come back here, drop this in, the boat's now moving under sail, and take control of, turn off your autopilot, and steer the boat from back here, and get a feel for it. You feel the weight and the pressure on those rudders and how much power you have to put into it to get the boat to move. And then imagine a crappy day when there's 6 to 8 foot seas and there's big surges of water coming. The rudders want to get slapped from side to side, and you have to physically fight that here. We know people that travel not only as far as a boat going offshore by itself, but we also know people that single-hand catamarans. Obviously, it can be done. There's great systems on board, and a single person can drive this. I personally would not choose to do that, but it's doable. One of the comments that came through was that a gentleman that wrote in had said, oh, now after watching our emergency at sea video, that his wife has some concerns about sailing offshore by themselves without a buddy boat. I think Maki's and my response to that would be not to be afraid to go offshore by yourselves. Obviously, make sure that your boat is mechanically sound. Make sure that you've checked all your systems. Make sure you have the critical spare parts to different systems on board, that in case you had to fix it on your own. But you know, we had a buddy boat, and it was not really an option. I mean, unless we were truly sinking, taking on water, we would have never chosen to get off the boat. 6 to 8 foot seas and 16 tons of vessel going up and down and slamming down in the water. There's dangers in getting off the boat. There's dangers trying to get back on your buddy boat.
And there's nothing they could have done to help us during that time.
Yeah, so
really.
Our buddy boat, somebody had said, could we have had been, actually I forgot, one of the comments was, could we have been towed or anything like that?
That puts in danger both
We're
boats.
compromising the safety of both vessels. It's a very complicated thing. We didn't really think about it until the island was in sight, and then we started thinking, well, how are we going to anchor? Because I could not let go of that rudder because the boat would just start going all over the place. And we realized, wow, we got to figure this out. Now we had talked to our buddy boat, and we had decided, why don't we slow down? They're going to move up, go ahead. They're going to anchor, drop their dinghy, and then Marco came over and helped us. Marco was here, Maki was up front, and I was the rudder lock holding the rudders in the back. So if we were without a buddy boat, we would have either tied off the tiller and I would have come up here and Maki would have done the normal thing, or I would have held the tiller in the back. Maki would have come here and run the engines to the spot of anchoring, put it in neutral, run up, drop the anchor, come here, pull back and set the anchor. I don't really like saying this saying in this situation, but it's a famous saying, and it is true that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And this has made us infinitely stronger, but we're trying to pass on this experience and as much information as possible so that you know what happened, what we did in the midst of it, and how we got ourselves back home. I know there's a lot of emotion and stuff. Ironically, in the midst of all of it, I was pretty fine, and it was like, we got to solve this problem and let's get ourselves home. But now when I reflect back on it, it's emotional. You know, you realize that it was dangerous, and I'm glad we're home.
You want a napkin?
I'll wipe my tear with the bottom of Maki's dress. We're in the Bahamas again. We're out sailing. I really don't want anybody that follows our adventure or follows any YouTubers or any of these sailing channels and stuff. I don't want you to take this as oh my God, I would never go out there and do this. You know, look what happened to OliLuki. Look, the truth is, you know, you can get into a horrible car accident at home. Life is life, and things happen, and we do the best that we can with the situation that we're given. Oh, here, you know what? Nobody ever sees you.
Oh, you took the phone off of my hand.
There's Maki, the master editor. You guys never get a chance to see her a lot. She's busy doing the editing, and she's working with Oliver and Lukas and homeschooling and lots of other things. So, and I know I told Oliver and Lukas to stay put, but I don't know, did you talk to them in the midst of all the stuff?
Yeah, and I think because they saw us very calm, I had them put the life vest and everything. They fall asleep. So they didn't really panic because we weren't panicking. There was no time to panic. There was no time to scream and cry. You were in the midst of something really, really scary. The chain broke. We lost the control of our boat. And the scariest thing was that we were spinning in the middle of the night. And we just couldn't figure out. It was like, which way does the tiller work? So until we got a full control of our tiller and of our boat, that was I think the hardest thing.
Yeah, and I just didn't see. I just see our friend Marco's light going. It kind of like blurred. Like you could see it for like 1 second, and it's not. So I knew we were spinning, but I was like, what happens if we like die? I think you were kind of sleeping.
I was like kind of like half asleep when that happened. I didn't hear the steering chain break. I just kind of saw us spinning in circles. I saw you run downstairs. The only thing I was doing is I was kind of like half awake. So I don't really remember thinking anything about. I was kind of like, thought I was dreaming.